Hello and welcome to Talkernate History, the podcast where we,
Matt
and Max, talk about works of alternate history scenarios, and history in general. This episode, we're analyzing an unusual film from the past, and it's called Wild Geese II.
Wild Gooser.
Wild Gooser, even Gooser, yeah. Wild Gosling. This is, of course, a sequel to Wild Geese I, which was about mercenaries in Africa.
Yes.
All right.
Had Richard Burton, Roger Moore, Hardy Kruger.
Not familiar with him.
He's a German actor.
Was he the drill instructor guy, or?
I think he's Rafer Janders, or one of the characters.
Okay.
I think he was South African. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
And it's a well-remembered movie. It's a movie people like. I saw it. I liked it.
It's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's entertaining.
The history of it's kind of crazy. Like, the guy that they're saving is based on Moise Chombe, who was the ruler of Katanga during the Congo crisis. Katanga, yeah. My life for Katanga. So basically, there was this action movie that was made about these mercenaries. It was actually based partially on the life of Mad Mike Hoare,
the famous Irish mercenary who didn't die that long ago.
Yeah, he was an accountant for the longest time.
World War II veteran.
Yeah.
Who then became a mercenary after the war, famous for his adventures in Africa, particularly in the Congo and against Katanga, and who only died, I think he was a member of the Henry Kissinger Club. I think he did make it into his hundreds and died in like 2020 or 2021.
I actually got one of his audiobooks off of Audible because, I wanted it as kind of reference material for that alternate history story set in the Congo. And I ended up giving up on it because it was, I don't know, it wasn't that engaging, but it was kind of funny because the man himself was reading it and you could hear him turning the pages on the book. And you could also tell it was recorded in his house because you could hear his birds chirping in the background. It's like parakeets or whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's like a low end record.
And do your own audiobook in your house. But in any case, we're not really going to be talking about Wild Geese I, mainly because it's got almost nothing to do with Wild Geese II.
It's basically unconnected.
Basically,
You could have made the movies unconnected and it would have made just as much sense, which is not, this movie doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it does its own job of not making sense. But like the very beginning of the movie is kind of hilarious because they
rehash footage from the first movie.
The entire first movie is summed up in about a minute and a half. And none of it has anything to do with this movie at all.
One character has a technical, tangential connection to it.
Right. And it was supposed to have a little bit more of a concrete connection because Richard Burton, who was the main hero from the first movie, was supposed to reprise his role in this second film. But he died very shortly before filming began, which caused kind of a crisis plot-wise because they had to scramble to figure out what the heck they were going to do.
Yeah, so it's Alan Faulkner is his character. So in this, there's Alex Faulkner, who's his brother.
Yes.
Played by the wonderful Edward Fox.
Edward Fox is a shining, beautiful star in this movie.
He knew what movie he was in, and he does a great job of living up to it.
He's hilarious in this movie. He's by far, I think, the best part of the film.
Oh, yeah, he is. Because a lot of other people try to be like very serious in this movie.
Yeah, Scott Glenn is dead serious this whole film.
Yeah, and in Edward Fox, not serious. The sort of, he's like the most aristocrat, good old boy. When I was in Harrow, when I went down to Eton and, stuff like, he plays a British aristocrat perfectly.
Yes. Best known probably for Day of the Jackal.
Yeah, he's great. He's the Jackal.
Yeah.
He's also Brian Horrocks in A Bridge Too Far, and he's got that great scene. 30 car will punch a hole and drive like hell, And Joe, if they find you, they'll think they've captured a wretched peasant based off of the way you dress,
When you tell your grandchildren about it, it will be terribly boring or whatever.
Tell them a story, and mightily bored they'll be. But he's so good in this. But he plays Alex Faulkner, who's also a professional mercenary.
Just so happens to also be a professional mercenary, just like his brother. They make some offhanded remark saying, oh, yeah, he did some crazy stuff in Africa, but it's nothing compared to this craziness.
Yes. And also, sorry, your brother's dead.
Oh, yeah. Apparently he died. He died somehow. They don't say how. But yeah, Richard Burton died in his 50s too, by the way.
He was a very heavy drinker and smoker, though.
It's sad. He was actually, so he was in the 1970s. He was in this movie called The Klansman with O.J. Simpson and Lee Marvin. But he was he was in this movie. I think he was playing the bad guy.
Juice. I'm not saying that O.J. killed those people. I'm just saying that they found out what happens when you squeeze the juice.
Oh, God.
And this was recorded after O.J. Simpson died, by the way.
He has passed away. And this is a pro O.J. Simpson innocence podcast.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I'm convinced.
Just like the Soviets were so honest in Mission to Moscow, he was so innocent.
But in this movie, in The Klansman, Richard Burton, there was like a scene where he had been shot, so he's supposed to be laying on the ground, and they remark over his dead body or whatever, and the director comes in and looks through the eyepiece and says, wow, that makeup's looking really good. And they say, he hasn't been in makeup yet, he just wanted to lay down for a minute. And they realized, oh no, Richard Burton, can you hear me? Are you okay? They had to rush him to the hospital. He was in a coma. He almost died on set.
Oh, wow.
And that was several years before. This was in the 70s. This is like in the 80s they made this movie.
Yeah, like mid-80s.
Yeah.
It's 84, 85, somewhere around there.
So the poor guy was in very bad health. And even though he seemed on the surface to be healthy, he was absolutely not, which is, the reason why he wasn't in this film. But yeah, they make mention of his character from the Wild Geese I.
Yeah. So the main story, if you could call it that, of this is that
there's a story.
Yeah, there's a story, but it's mightily confusing. It is. So basically, some network news company.
EBC.
Yes. The immortal EBC. You remember EBC, everyone?
Of course. Yeah, I got the streaming service. EBC Plus.
Wants to hire mercenaries to break Rudolf Hess out of Spandau Prison so they can interview him about the secret deals that will rock the world.
Secret deals. They keep throwing around the word secret deals.
All the secret deals that he knows about and hasn't said anything about.
Not once in the 40, 50 years ever since he's been imprisoned.
Yeah. So that's the underlying story, which is it's crazy that that's the goal. You're supposed to root for the heroes who are going to break the old number 2 of the Nazi regime out of Spandau Prison, where he's serving his life sentence.
For what? For money. Just to get money. That's really the only reason.
Well, they say we'll make lots of money off of this.
Yeah. And there's so many questions that just pop up immediately. Like, okay, you're going to film this interview. Won't that implicate you in a ridiculously serious crime causing an international incident?
Yes.
Like everyone is now getting arrested by the FBI immediately. What's going on here, people?
And some background to it. So Rudolf Hess was kept in Spandau Prison after his conviction at the Nuremberg trials. We can talk maybe a little bit later about how he comes into British custody in May of 1941. But Hess was the man that Hitler dictated. Here's your history part of the podcast.
Yeah.
Was the man who took down Hitler's dictation for Mein Kampf. He was an early founder of the Nazi Party, a World War I veteran, surprisingly born in Alexandria, Egypt, of all places.
Interesting.
But was the legal number 2 in the Nazi regime up until his flight to Scotland in 1941. And he died at the age of 93, and I think it was 1987. He was the last major figure of the Third Reich to still be alive.
My goodness, 87?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Rudolf Hess dies in 1987, age of 93. He hung himself while in prison, and a lot of people disputed whether or not he did this on his own. And remember, and this is a thing, this is part of the plot too, is he's the only prisoner in Spandau Prison after, I believe it was Albert Speer was released. This whole prison, which was run by the 4 allied nations, US, France, Britain, and the Soviets, kept this prison open just to keep him in. And many people wanted to release him, but the Soviets in particular were harshly against it because he was serving a life sentence. Unlike many of the other people at Nuremberg, he received a life sentence rather than a death sentence. Probably spared by the fact that he spent the last 4 years of the war in British custody.
Right. So his flight to Britain happened before Operation Barbarossa, which is when all the not all, but some of the greatest atrocities are committed by the Nazis. So he can't really be implicated in a lot of those because he was in custody for.
Yeah. He was convicted of conspiracy to start the war, but he was acquitted of crimes against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So, long story short, he's sitting in Spandau Prison. Literally, this prison was kept open just for him. And interesting, one of the wardens of Spandau Prison was Ronald Spears, who was the commander of Easy Company and Band of Brothers.
No way.
He's the guy who ran through the town, like when Dick Winters is like, "You're fired," to the other guy who's like a coward, like, "You, Spears, take over."
Is that Foy? Is that
in
what
Foy? He runs through Foy, which a town I've been in, by the way.
Oh, my
well,
goodness.
it's hardly a town; it's a tiny village. But
okay.
But so that Ronald Spears post-war was one of the wardens of Spandau, but in like the 60s.
Well, what happened after Hess died? Is it a museum now?
It was destroyed. I think it was.
Really?
Yeah. And they mention it in there that one of the things about Spandau that made at least the Americans and the British uncomfortable is that the Soviets had the right to have troops based there when it was their turn to run the prison.
Okay.
So that was something that was uncomfortable, I think. So Hess is kept in Spandau for this, and the story really, this is about breaking Hess out of the prison to give an interview or something,
or to talk about those secret deals,
all these secret deals,
and we're going to make so much money for this interview about these secret deals, whatever those may be. So the way we're introduced to all this silliness is that we have like these network executives, and they call in Edward Fox, I guess Alex Faulkner, to propose to him this plot of saving Rudolf Hess. And it's so funny because in order to give the audience the necessary exposition, they just pop a VHS tape in the TV and they start playing a documentary that it's implied that they made this themselves, for presenting to mercenaries to go break people out of prison for them.
Yeah.
And they give the whole spiel about him.
Well, they say this guy knows about secret deals that would make Watergate look like kid stuff.
And Edward Fox, during it, he says, "Yes, I'm well aware of all this." And it's like, this is just refamiliarizing you. But by the end of it, he says, "Am I supposed to laugh at this?" And then he just basically makes fun
at the plan
to free Hess out of prison. Like Edward Fox, Faulkner is like, "This is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life." He's completely like, it's almost like a meta commentary for the movie itself.
Like, this is so stupid. Like, what are you talking about?
Why in God's name would anyone want to do this?
And so he's there with Michael Lucas, who's like the American bureau chief in Europe for EBC, and then Michael's sister, Kathy. Well, Michael is American, and Kathy, his sister,
is not.
She talks in this very prim and proper British accent.
Yeah, but it's a weird accent, though. At times we thought, is she supposed to be trying to be Russian or something? We looked it up. She's from Nicaragua.
Yeah, she's half American, half Nicaraguan. And her name, so the actress's name is Barbara Carrera. Mm-hmm. And interesting enough, her being with Edward Fox is a reunion for them because they were in the movie Never Say Never Again. Edward Fox is M in that. That's the unofficial James Bond movie where Sean Connery came back in the 80s and played James Bond again. And then Barbara Carrera was the femme fatale, Fatima Blush. But I will say about this quick divergence is that Never Say Never Again, I hadn't watched it for years. And then earlier this year, I was watching some James Bond movies and I saw that it was on Amazon and I watched it. It is actually pretty good. It's not the best James Bond movie made, but it is much better than like the Roger Moore movies being made in like the early 1980s.
God, there's so many bad ones. Octopussy. Was that the 70s or 80s?
That was 80s. Octopussy. The funny thing is, I think of Roger Moore as like the 70s James Bond, but the last James Bond movie he made was in 1985. Like he went well into the 80s. Like Octopussy, For Your Eyes Only, View to a Kill.
Oh my God, View to a Kill. I was trying to think, what was the one that started with him in the ridiculous submarine and the skiing? That's View to a Kill right there. Yeah.
What a movie. Christopher Walken.
Movie. You want to talk about Timothy Dalton. I mean, that first movie, Living Daylights, mm-hmm. Like I thought that was pretty good when we watched it together recently.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it's actually way better than I think his Dalton ones are better than people give them credit for.
Just compare that to View to a Kill and it's
Octopussy is so bad.
It's so off. Sorry, George McFraser or whatever your name is, the guy
George
who wrote it.
McDonald Fraser.
George McDonald Fraser, yeah, that's it. But that movie sucks. It's so bad. The stupid clown stuff.
Yeah,
it's just
hiding in the alligator.
the alligator. Oh my god.
And you thought Moonraker was crazy.
I actually kind of like Moonraker, to be honest.
Well, I do too, because it just embraces the nut. So
dumb.
Sorry, let me drive my gondola through
The hover gondola.
the hover gondola.
Oh my god.
So so it's kind of a reunion for them, I guess. But
Yeah, I should check that movie out. I don't think I've ever seen it.
it's good, and it's directed by Irvin Kershner, who directed The Empire Strikes Back. So like you have like a very capable director helming the movie, and it's Sean Connery like kind of parodying the character very subtly. It's quite good.
So is it like he's really over the hill, but he's like kind of trying to relive his glory? Like how do you?
Well,
mean parody?
it's a remake of Thunderball, because what happened is the guy who created the script for Thunderball had the co-rights to James Bond for the Thunderball story.
Okay.
And there was like a super long legal fight with MGM over it. And ultimately his family, I guess there's a settlement like 10 or so years ago, and the rights to Thunderball came back to United Artists or MGM or whoever, but he had the rights to it. So he made this movie to try and make money off of it.
Can this guy remake Thunderball again? Get Daniel Craig to come back to do Thunderball?
Sorry, everyone. I wasn't blown up by that missile at the end of No Time to Die. I'm actually alive. Thank you very much.
Interesting. Okay.
So we've got, here we go. So Faulkner won't take it because this is ridiculous. So
it's a dumb idea.
So he says you have to get Haddad.
Haddad, yeah. Here's a man who's just crazy enough to do it. So we're introduced to Haddad. He's this white man
played by Scott Glenn.
Scott Glenn. He's just walking down the street. There's funky slap bass music playing. And he walks up to a shop where they're selling Hitler t-shirts.
Well, it's not obvious if you stop it and you look. They're selling a bunch of Hitler t-shirts.
Hitler t-shirts and a Confederate flag and a British flag. What
commonly found at all London stores, the obligatory Hitler t-shirt.
I guess it seems to be like an army surplus store or something, because there's like a mannequin with a gas mask on and stuff.
Whatever it is. And Scott Glenn, by the way, he was in The Right Stuff. He was Stick in the Daredevil TV show. He also was Clarice's boss in The Silence of the Lambs.
He looks very different in Silence of the Lambs than he does in this movie.
That's true.
He's pretty muscular in this movie. Like there's parts where his shirt's off and he's very muscular. But yeah, like you see him on the street and he gets ambushed by, I guess, TV executive henchmen or something, and he beats them up.
It's Palestinians who are angry at him because
those are Palestinians.
Because it turns out that he's part Lebanese and his family was murdered by the PLO or Palestinian. They say Palestinian terrorists, but it's clearly like the PLO. Yeah. And he talks about how he killed a whole bunch of them in Lebanon.
It's like Black September or something.
Yeah, something along those lines. So I guess this person who ambushes him in the urinal with a knife, who he just breaks his neck and leaves him sitting there in the urinal.
The movie does not explain this, though. A lot of this movie is, you have to be really paying attention to even sort of understand what the hell is going on. And even if you pay perfect attention, it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like before we watched this movie, I listened to the commentary. I did not watch the film, but I was listening to it. And there was these two film historians, and they were talking about the movie. And for one, they were like giving it very faint praise. They were saying, this movie's got a lot of problems, but there's some good spots in it. And one of the things they said was like, if you really analyze the plot of this movie, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, it doesn't.
Sorry you paid $20 for the DVD, but I hate to break it to you.
This movie ain't that good. And so the long story short is Haddad accepts the assignment and he goes to West Berlin.
Yeah.
And we won't have to go there's what at first when I was reading about this movie, which the Wikipedia summary of this movie is insane.
Yeah.
It's so complex and convoluted. But it reflects what the worst thing about this movie is. At first I thought they were going to make Rudolf Hess to be out like the hero of it. That's not exactly what they do, although they do try and make him like this sympathetic old man, which is not great at all.
Yeah.
But what the real sin of this movie is, it's really fucking confusing. How many backstabs, double crosses, triple crosses happen in this film?
It happens so many damn times. I can't even count it. It's a mess. The movie is a mess, really. So our boy Haddad, he's like jogging around, and they filmed it actually in West Berlin, obviously, because there's landmarks all over the place.
They're at the Berlin Wall at a couple times.
They actually film at Spandau. They actually film at the Berlin Wall. They film at the Olympic Stadium
from 1936, which is still there. Yeah.
But they don't manage to make any of it look glamorous. Like, they make West Berlin look like a real
shithole,
crappy place. Yeah.
This industrial, not very.
This is perhaps reflecting reality. I don't know. I wasn't there. But
usually when people think of East Berlin, they think crappy. West Berlin's like shiny new, which, having been to Berlin, the western parts are nicer. The eastern parts are not as nice. But it is kind of an industrial. It was a rebuilt. I mean, the city was flattened during World War II. So... So Haddad at one point gets kidnapped by these toughs who try to like strangle him with like with a bag. But the way his face, I know it shouldn't be funny, but the way his like face is pressed against it is really, really goofy.
His nose is probably very uncomfortable in that bag. But and the bad guy in that is Strobling.
Yes.
Strobling, who...
He's a former member of the Gehlen organization, so he was, I guess, a German intelligence officer in World War II, but now works for the Soviets, like arranging paramilitary groups and things like that. So, like, he wants Hess, I guess, and then there's this British colonel who comes to Haddad, and he's like, well, the British want to get rid of Hess because we want to close down the prison, but we can't kill him because there's going to be an autopsy when all 4 nations will have doctors there, so I can't just kill him. So I need you to capture him, and then we'll turn him over to us. And then it turns out that like the colonel was actually, you learn at the end, he was working for the Soviets.
Spoilers.
It's just ridiculous. It's just so, spoiler alert.
It's not making a lot of, so there's multiple different people who all want to have Hess for reasons that are never really truly explained. Like, why do the Soviets want Hess? To kill him? To put him on trial? Like, what?
He already was tried. We're going to try you again. I guess there's no double jeopardy in the Soviets.
And like, why the British guy? So it turns out the British guy and the Soviet guy are working together, I guess.
No, well, there's a Soviet general played by Patrick Stewart.
Yeah,
too. We forgot about that.
He's the Soviet commander of
East Berlin.
Yeah. And he apparently goes to the same drag show that the British guy goes to.
Oh, yeah, because there's a meeting in a cabaret / drag show for some reason. This British guy loves drag shows.
He's a big fan, yeah. He loves having the waitress on his lap during it. And this is like, he says, oh, there's no bugs in here, so we can talk freely. And that's where he explains that he'll do everything he can to help the extraction of Hess. And there's just scene after scene of like guy getting pulled aside and a gun put on him. There's IRA crap that happens at some point.
Yeah, because Haddad's putting together a team, because ultimately what he figures out, because the British tell him, like, the thing is you can't really break into Spandau, even though Haddad briefly breaks in at one point. They're like, you're going to have to get him when he's being transported to the British military hospital, and that's the weak point in the whole, the whole defense.
They're going to inject him with propofol or some drug like that, cause an asthma attack, and then induce
a doctor on the inside who works there is like, one of the jailers is going to give him some drug to make it look like he's having an asthma attack, so that they then transport him to the hospital. And then Haddad and his team, which there's some random guys who I guess Haddad knows who joins it, and then Strobling kidnaps Kathy, who's become a lover of Haddad's, and there's a scene where they have this sex scene where they do a lot of rolling around to this hilarious like 70s, probably like 70s porn music. But then there's a funny thing. So after their sex scene's finished up, they're just laying there in bed with the bed sheets always perfectly positioned.
Yeah, she was not into that for this film.
The L-shaped bed sheets that perfectly cover. And then Faulkner comes in because Haddad's gotten Faulkner to join them. And like, unlike so many movies, like, she has the appropriate reaction that someone would have if they walked in on them having sex, which she starts screaming at him to leave.
Get the hell out of here, you creep.
Which I thought,
what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, as he walks around the room and she's like screaming like, get out. It's just I thought that was very funny, because that seemed like a very realistic, in a movie that's not very realistic, a very realistic reaction.
Yeah, Ed Fox is the best. And he talks about like, sometimes I get aches and pains and a fever. Just got a touch of malaria.
And he has a fake leg, apparently, but you never see it. And
Yeah.
he uses this like weird, it looks like a MAC-10 sniper rifle.
We thought for sure it was a MAC-10, but we went to IMFDB, and it's just a 1911 with a bunch of attachments on it.
I guess.
And he uses it like a sniper rifle, which is interesting.
Yeah. Pistols, always known to be good sniper weapons.
There's a part where someone's looking through binoculars out of a window, and one, everything is red. They just put a red filter over it. And two, the numbers on it are complete nonsense. They don't mean anything. What on earth is this?
So Strobling has kidnapped Kathy.
Yes.
And then
with the help of the IRA
and then
guys.
the IRA, one of the IRA guys joins with, he's like placed with Haddad's group as insurance.
Yep.
And then one of the jailers, who's a British drill sergeant, is going to teach them to act like British soldiers.
Yeah, he's North Irish.
He's an Irish. Yeah. And so he doesn't like the IRA guy who's disrespectful to him. Yeah. And then he trains them to be ready, and they're all in their uniforms ready to go.
There's a lot of drilling, by the way.
Yes, there's
critical for the operation to come.
The drilling in which is funny because the drilling they do has no impact when you actually see them kidnap Hess. Like there was no need for them to drill. Like, but this IRA guy Horrigan.
Mm-hmm.
And then he and Murphy is the guy who's training them, jaw at each other. And then Murphy just pulls out a Webley and just shoots him in the knees and then shoots him in the head to get revenge for the British soldiers that Horrigan has killed in Northern Ireland or something.
And to make this confusing story even more confusing, our main guy is like, well, we'll need to give Strobling another hostage to tide him over because we killed this guy. So we need to give over the brother of Kathy, who also has joined them for some reason.
Yes.
Michael,
the American, and Kathy, the Britisher.
Michael, the American TV executive, is, I guess, part of this commando raid for some reason. He's down.
He's gonna drill. He's like drilling with them, and
for some ungodly reason. So they send him over there with a suit with a bomb inside of it. But it's a bomb that catches on fire for about 10 seconds before exploding. It's so bizarre. The whole thing is really, really strange.
It's so weird.
Very convoluted.
And then
too.
What happens is that they break in and rescue Kathy, but Michael gets killed. And then Strobling goes. So this is right after this is before. Then after that, they go and. My God, I'm trying to trace this fucking movie back in my head.
I know.
And we just watched it.
We were originally going to watch 2 movies and record 2 episodes in a row, but that would have been impossible because I won't remember this. No way.
So then they go to. Oh, by the way, early on, I'm looking at our notes. So at one point earlier in the movie, Haddad is following like a convoy, like a medical convoy.
That's right. Yeah.
And he's like the worst tailor ever because he's right behind them. He's also a terrible driver because if you watch, he's driving straight down the center of the road with the dotted line right in the middle of his car.
Listen to The Rock. Know your role. Pick a lane. Come on.
Yeah. Also, Haddad only wants $400,000, half now, half on completion.
Insane, especially considering how many murders they end up committing.
My God. And there's this, he also enlists this guy called El Ali to get them passports because they're going to, after they kidnap Hess, they're going to join him with these Austrian football fans so they can get on a flight to Vienna or something.
El Ali is a large man, very sweaty.
He looks like Sidney Greenstreet.
He does.
But he's so damn sweaty. You imagine the director's like, bring over that spray bottle. He's not sweaty enough. So.
Oh my God. And it's so convoluted. They go to a motorcycle show and there's like these 2 guys who are driving motorcycles in this wooden cylinder, and they're driving so fast they can drive perpendicular to the ground, and it's very impressive. It looks crazy.
Would it be parallel or perpendicular?
Well,
who cares?
No, I would say it would be perpendicular to the ground, but
it's pretty crazy looking.
It looks nuts, but it's like, why is this in the movie? Why is this important?
Because he's going to be the guy. Because what they're going to do is they're going to have him ram into Hess's ambulance because there's
right.
someone who's going to mark the ambulance with a piece of green tape
Yeah.
to tell them what ambulance Hess is in. And then this guy's going to ram Hess's ambulance, causing an accident. And then they will be in British uniforms and go and then take Hess out and replace him with a suitable replacement body that will fool them just long enough to escape.
Haddad's good friend El Ali has found another 90-year-old white man who looks a little bit like Hess. They even say, oh, we've got to warm his body ahead of time. So they got thermal warmers that they put this dead body with. I guess they put similar clothing on. This plan is so complicated. Why did it have to be this complicated?
Well, the problem is it's susceptible to any number of. So they're going to ram Hess's.
Well, and not to mention, before they can ram it, they need to make the road wet. It's so important that the road is wet before they do this.
So they have someone steal or borrow like a municipal vehicle that sprays the road with all.
It makes you wonder if, like, there was, we had to cut out the subplot where Basque separatists also insisted on taking Hess. So we had to convince them to loan us the truck with the water in it so we could put the water on the road.
It's
so
really
absurd.
dumb. It's really dumb. But so Hess, someone gives him this medicine you don't see.
Yeah, we don't see that.
And then Hess is in the ambulance. And by the way, he's like 88 or 89 years old. So you're taking this plan is what a massive risk. You're going to ram his ambulance with a car. Like, how do you know that you're not going to cause a car accident? You're not going to open up the car and he's just going to be dead.
All these people that they kill throughout the movie, it's all in pursuit of getting Hess alive. He must be alive.
Yeah, Hess dead is of no use to them.
Doesn't work. So they need to inject him with this drug, which, by the way, would show up on the autopsy if he died, and then it would blow
also
everything.
Would very possibly kill him. I mean, someone in
Yeah.
their late 80s is usually in relatively fragile health.
Yes.
And then they're going to cause a car accident.
The car accident. The car is on its side. Easily, Hess could be dead any number of ways because of this.
Yeah. And so they cause the accident. They get him out of the car. I think the French guy, Michael, dies. Unclear.
Someone dies.
Yeah. His car is on fire. I think he dies.
There's 2 or 3 or 4 guys with mustaches who all look really similar, and at least one of them dies. Actually, Michael's one of them, and he does die too. So at least 2 of them die in this movie.
And then they get Hess, and then Strobling, they're like, okay, well, you'll meet us at the Kaiser Wilhelm monument, but you have to put on these MP clothes. And then Strobling's driver is going to kill one of Haddad's men, but then Haddad kills him. And then Strobling goes to the Kaiser Wilhelm monument. And then Colonel Reed Henry walks out with a suppressed Uzi that has the biggest suppressor I've ever seen in my life. And then he shoots Strobling. Oh, that's a mistake.
But wait, he shoots Strobling, but he thinks it's Hess.
Yes, at first he thinks it's Hess.
At first he thinks it's Hess. So our boy Haddad knew this was coming, so decided to do a triple cross by convincing Strobling to do this, thinking he was going to a meeting with Hess, but Strobling broke his ankle, so he was limping, so he looked like he was a 90-year-old German man, and then that's why the British Colonel Reed Henry got out his suppressed Uzi and killed him, thinking it was Hess, but it wasn't.
And then Reed Henry was also working for the Soviets, because then he goes and meets with Patrick Stewart and then this other random guy who we've never seen before.
Strobling and the British man are working for the same guys. I guess they didn't communicate enough with each other, so they accidentally killed one another.
And then Reed Henry gets shot in the head with his own gun.
Right.
By
a guy. I don't know who this man is, honestly.
And then Patrick Stewart.
Wait, we need to watch the movie again to figure out who this man is.
No.
Patrick Stewart's performance in that scene is really funny.
Yes, he's a bad accent. Apparently, he's quite ashamed of his appearance in that, and I think he really needed money.
He said he needed to refurbish his house or something. But yeah, it's very funny.
So you have... Also, by the way, when Kathy is kidnapped earlier, she gets kidnapped in broad daylight on a street in front of a bunch of people, and no one does anything.
Couldn't be more
obvious that this is... And she's screaming. She's like, oh my God!
Help me. It makes West Berlin seem like a really dangerous place. This stuff happens all the time and the cops do nothing.
Yeah. So ultimately, So, okay, now they take Hess and then they all pretend to be these Austrian football fans who are drunk.
Right.
And then they're getting on an Interflug flight from East Berlin to Vienna.
Right. Okay.
With Hess, who is also additionally drugged, so he doesn't say anything. And you half expect that someone at some point is going to look at him and be like, "Oh my God, that's Rudolf Hess!"
Like one of the German
Stop, halt!
One of the German guards sees his face and he's like, "I know that monobrow anywhere." Oh my goodness.
Or at one point, there's a lady who's on the bus to the airport who's like, "You all aren't on this bus. You weren't on this bus before. I remember. I didn't see you people before." And they come up with some contrivance. I guess the bus driver is like tapping their watch, like, "We've got to go." And like, but that's the whole, like, that's very realistic. Like a plan that's this convoluted and complex could be sabotaged easily by something like that. So they get Hess. They're at the airport, and one of the guys...
Hess is wearing a bucket hat, by the way. This is important.
Sir Laurence Olivier, by the way, we forgot to say. Sir Laurence Olivier, one of the great English-speaking actors in the world of the 20th century.
Yeah. Doing this role.
Which I have a funny, interesting story about Rudolf Hess. Laurence Olivier.
I'm actually good friends with him.
Well, Laurence Olivier, first of all, was in the movie The Betsy, where he plays like a Henry Ford stand-in, and apparently, I've been told, there's a scene where he dry humps a maid, which I can't even believe.
Oh, no.
But also, Laurence Olivier... So he's in this movie for one reason, money. And he was in a lot of movies at the end of his life, including The Betsy, because he needed money. And because he was ill, he was actually dying for the last few years of his life, and he just wanted to make lots of money. And interesting that he plays Hess in this movie because he plays a Nazi in Marathon Man, a Nazi doctor, but then he plays a Nazi hunter in The Boys from Brazil. But Sir Laurence Olivier, I actually know somebody who met Laurence Olivier and had dinner with him. I mean, this is a long time ago, but this is in like this 80s range. And he said that Laurence Olivier was super nice, but also very drunk at dinner, and also kept saying, "I don't know why people think I'm a good actor. I'm not a very good actor, I don't think." Which is funny because you'd watch a movie like this. But
an exclusive expose.
Yeah. So they're dragging, so they get through passport control at the airport, and there's like an eagle-eyed kind of East German like custom officer who's like sees that something's wrong, and they just stab him.
Yeah, they kill him. They stab him in the heart right in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Talk about parts where your plan can go completely wrong. You murdered someone.
Yeah. So they fly Hess to Vienna to some safe house that this EBC has.
Yeah.
And Hess, so it's really only one major scene with Laurence Olivier. Yeah. He must have done this in like a day or two.
Yeah, he's comatose pretty much in all the other ones.
Yeah.
There's a scene with him at Spandau where he's walking around, but that could be a stand-in. It could be, not really him.
Yeah. So, yeah. And interesting enough, in Spandau, Spandau, excuse me, was walking around the garden. And apparently towards the end of his life, during the time he was there, he could pretty much like move freely around the prison because he's like in his 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Where's he going to go?
Well, this movie should have scared them into believing he could be kidnapped in this hyper convoluted plot that just, But so Hess gives this whole speech about, "I'm a tired old man. I've done bad things in my life, and
he says whether I did something bad or not, it doesn't matter or something. I don't deserve to go." Or
he said,
something.
So it's vague. So he doesn't, and they make him out like this sympathetic old man, which is very wrongheaded. That's just very,
But he seems to not want to give the interview. He just seems.
No, he doesn't. He says, "I'm not going to be interviewed." Like, no, I want to go back to prison. He's like, "I want you to take me back to the prison,"
which made this entire movie completely pointless. What was the point of all
the air characters hint towards these, like 19 men died breaking you out of this prison. And he's like, whatever, sort of,
I didn't want to be rescued.
He's like, "I didn't ask to be rescued." And he's like, "Take me back." So they take him to the French embassy, and he walks.
It'd be really funny if the French then guillotine him afterwards.
God, that would be funny. Yeah. "You're back." Well, I thought it would have been funny if they're just talking to him and he's like, "Take me back," and they just like shoot him to pay him back. Like, "All of our friends died. My brother died breaking you out."
Is Germany one of those countries where it's not illegal to escape from prison?
It is. The act of escape is not illegal. They just take you back to prison.
Interesting. Like Mexico with El Chapo. Yeah.
Well, you feel like it would be a crime, but I guess not.
It definitely is a crime. Like, I don't understand why anyone would pretend otherwise. It's not a POW camp, Like,
he's a war criminal.
yeah, you went through a trial, you were guilty, so serve your time. Like, I think it's silly, the idea that it's not a crime to escape from prison.
So they take Hess back happily ever after, and then there's a newspaper clipping at the end that says rumors that Hess escaped from, have been just unsubstantiated.
Yeah, so it's like, it implies that it's a secret history where this could have happened in real life, but no one noticed because, they covered it up afterwards or whatever.
Or I guess.
Yes. I mean, this movie is a mess.
It
An
is.
absolute mess.
It's just so confusing.
Yeah. There were parts that were pretty funny, that were amusing. Edward Fox is great.
Fox, he's just chewing the scenery, and he's just doing such a damn good job as it.
When he's got the malaria, and he's like, he's got malaria, and he's also potentially dosed with LSD as well.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
I guess that's what's happening.
Yeah,
right?
like the Huyrigan gives him LSD.
I guess.
Instead of his malaria pills or something. Just drink a gin and tonic. Get some quinine in you.
Exactly. Precisely.
Some things we could talk about beyond just the insanity of this is that, we are, in fact, an alternate history podcast. So where's the alternate history, you may ask? And I say, here. So interesting enough. So Rudolf Hess, if he doesn't, you all may be familiar with the broad sketches. You do listen to this channel, so you may be familiar with the broad sketches. Long story short, Rudolf Hess by 1941 was in kind of a tenuous position in the Nazi hierarchy, which is very backstabby. In an early episode of ours, you talked about how like Nazi Germany was all these competing factions in the leadership. And Hess was technically number 2, but Goering and Himmler definitely had more power and really, frankly, more prestige. So Hess gets in a Bf-110, a Messerschmitt Bf-110 twin-engine Zerstörer destroyer. And those are the first planes ever to have the shark mouths painted on the engines that later the Flying Tigers would adopt.
Are they a bomber interceptor? Is that the idea?
They were a twin-engine heavy fighter. So they were used in a lot of bomber interceptions later in the war.
Okay.
They were used a lot at the beginning of the war, and then they were used ground attack, and then later bomb. But they were actually very effective night fighters.
Interesting. Okay.
Because they weren't highly maneuverable. They were pretty easy targets.
So they put like radar equipment inside of it or something?
Yeah, they could have a radar operator and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
They also put something called Schragermusik, which is they called slanting music, which were cannons built into the top of the fuselage that could fire horizontally into the belly of British bombers.
So you like locate them and then sneak up on them. It's night, so they can't see anything, and then get underneath them and then blast
you get below them and blast them, which is a tactic used by a British ace in World War I, Albert Ball. The first great British ace. He on his Newport, he would fly below German planes, and he would take the Lewis gun that fired over the top, and it was on a special mount, and he would move it down so it was facing up, and he would shoot into the belly of the plane.
Is this like a Gotha bomber or just a regular
twin engine?
Okay.
Gotha would have been too big. It was also too early. I think he became famous over the Somme in 1916.
Okay.
So long story short is, so Hess gets in a Bf-110. He has this idea that he's going to initiate peace talks by meeting with a Scottish aristocrat. So he flies to Scotland and bails out.
Yeah. Hurts his leg doing that too, right?
He was quickly captured, and nothing came of it. And the Germans were like, "Oh, he's got mental problems and all sorts of stuff." But the question is, what if Hess didn't do this? What if Hess stays?
Well, that means he probably gets executed at the end of the war. I don't know
if he survives.
If he survives, right?
Yeah.
That too. If he doesn't,
do
what many others did, Himmler included. If you know what I mean.
Or he was just killed by the British. That's Mark Felton in one of his videos hints at maybe the British.
Oh yeah,
and maybe that feeds into that whole like secret deals,
conspiracy stuff. There's many rumors of embarrassing things that the British government did during World War II, and most people not really specific about what it is, but a lot of it pertains to secret negotiations with the Germans, which would make them look bad later.
Yeah, and probably something with Edward VIII too. There's probably more collusion with him, potentially, with him and the Germans, and we realize that he was, that he may have been in direct contact with them. Things like that may have been plotting against, who knows. There's still a lot of that stuff is still sealed until I think the 2040s. I think it's got like 100-year seal on it or something.
But like, what could Hess know that would be so embarrassing?
Well, that's the thing, because it's so early in the war.
Yeah, it's before Barbarossa. It's before the invasion of the Soviet Union. So like, maybe he told the British Germany was going to invade the Soviet Union, and the British didn't tell the Soviet Union or something. Like maybe that's the embarrassment.
Well, not that Stalin would have believed him anyway.
Yeah, and like why, and also why believe Hess? You know, he could be lying to you.
Yeah.
And the Soviet Union is not your ally. It's an ally of your enemy. So like, why? We're not allies yet. Why do I have to tell you this stuff? You know,
Exactly.
I don't think it would be that embarrassing. I mean, it'd be a little embarrassing, but I don't know.
Yeah. So if Hess, though, if he doesn't go, does he stay the number 2, the titular number 2 of Nazi Germany, and just is increasingly sidelined? Because that means probably at the end of the war he's getting executed.
Yeah, most
Nuremberg
likely.
means he will not escape. He will not escape execution at Nuremberg. Will he be the great? Because the big catch, who they really wanted to capture, were Goering and Himmler. They get Goering. Well, they technically get Himmler, but not for very long. But
he shaved his mustache off. Master of disguise.
Yes, exactly.
He was running. He was running. Have you seen that picture of him getting the silver medal for athleticism?
I think I have. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's really, really funny.
But so Goering was the big catch for Nuremberg. But would have Hess been more the catch if he was still? You wonder how different the war would have been potentially if Hess is still around. What is Rudolf Hess doing in 1944 if he's still in Nazi Germany?
What influence does he have as the whatever he was?
He'd be a Reichsfuhrer, right?
Reichsfuhrer, yeah. So what is
Or
that?
the deputy Führer.
What does that entail? What does he actually do?
Don't know.
Me neither.
But he probably would not have escaped the hangman's noose. That's for sure.
Right.
Make lemonade out of lemons, right? Out of this, is that when it comes to alternate history. So yeah, would Hess have been? What would have happened to Hess if he didn't leave? Well, I'd get executed, I guess, if he doesn't. But would his role have changed? Would he have formally stepped down? Would Hitler have asked him, to step down so that Goering or Himmler could become the official number 2?
I mean, if he legitimately had mental health problems, like, would he be ousted? Would he be? Or would he step down voluntarily and then escape Nuremberg judgment because of that? Like he's like retires to.
Feel like the longer he stays as part of the Nazi government, the harder it would become for him to.
But Speer was able to get out of it with his "I'm so sorry" gimmick.
Yeah, 20-year sentence too, not even a life sentence.
It's crazy. I can't believe it. And he was in charge of forced labor camps, and he still gets out of it.
Yeah. Pretty
much with a slap on the wrist comparatively. It's crazy.
So yeah, this is interesting. This movie is but
it's a time capsule,
Yeah.
You see West
the
Berlin.
clothes are a time capsule.
Yeah, the fashion is unbelievably bad. So much denim in this movie, it's out of control.
No, you were saying it was a time capsule. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, like you see the Berlin Wall too, the actual Berlin Wall, and you see neo-Nazi graffiti on it, which is crazy.
That was weird.
You see the terrorism stuff, the IRA stuff, the PLO stuff, but as a thriller, I mean, you want your thriller to be comprehensible,
It's just not.
And unfortunately, it is just not. And I you know what? And I looked up on the Wikipedia, I was trying to read the synopsis of the novel that this is based on, The Squared Circle. And it's funny because the guy who was writing the article just gives up about halfway through. It's like, and then they recruited this guy to help free Hess, period. And then what happens next?
All the world wonders.
And in that version, it's not a TV crew. It's like radical human rights guys who want to free Hess because it's unjust that someone would have a life sentence or something.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's even, in some ways, even more insane.
The morals of that are more insane than they are in this. The idea that this broadcasting company thought they were going to get away with it. Like, ooh, look at the exclusive. We have Hess. We just found him on the street, I guess, and then just so happened to cash in. Sorry for all those people who got killed in the breakout, though.
If you were going to make a Wild Geese III, what kind of plot would you put on it?
Oh, God. Well, aren't they all going to be, retired by now?
Well, yeah, you would. Well, Edward Fox is still alive.
Well, they have made Wild Geese movies. They're called The Expendables.
Sure. The plot is, well, they went the correct direction, which just make a dumb, simple action movie.
Yeah.
Not like a labyrinthine, what the hell is going on kind of thing.
Exactly.
Maybe like you could have like, oh, we need to break out Khalid Sheikh Mohammed from 80X Florence so Tucker Carlson can have an interview with him.
I don't think he's actually in. He's in Florence. He's in Guantanamo, I think.
He's still in Guantanamo? Okay. Well, maybe you can break out Who is
Who
it
would be
for?
who would be a who would be like a I mean I was about
Eric
to say
Rudolph?
yeah Ted
Like,
Kaczynski. Well, he's dead now.
He's dead
but,
now, yeah.
But someone of that. It would be equivalent of someone break out the Boston bomber Tsarnaev.
Dzhokhar
Yeah,
Tsarnaev, yeah.
make that person the hero of your story. Yeah, no.
No, please. I would like to go back to Florence.
I want to be executed, please. I deserve it. It's just that would be the equivalent of the I mean, like they make Rudolf Hess out as this like, well, he's doing the noble thing by going back. Like this guy was a war criminal.
Yeah.
War criminal.
Yeah. And like
very high-ranking, important member of the Nazi Party. This was, you know.
And the main characters of this movie are completely amoral. They're not good. They're villains. All of them are villains. They kill all these people.
Kill all these people, including these innocent soldiers and guards who have nothing to do with.
Why don't they pull out a gun and say, "Damn it, Hess, I'm not getting paid unless you do this damn interview. So come on."
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to the lady on camera.
Exactly. You'd think they're just like, oh, okay. If he doesn't want to do it, they could be like, yeah, we're gonna torture you until you give us this interview.
Yeah, for real. Because I wonder if they even got paid for all this crap. But what are you gonna do? It's nonsense. The movie is ridiculous.
The movie in the end double-crossed itself.
It did. It double-crossed the franchise. You could easily do more Wild Geese movies if you didn't have this craziness in between.
And how are the wild geese in this related to the historical wild geese, which were Irish soldiers, mercenaries who fought in the French army because they were Catholics?
Huh. Nothing.
Well, certainly not anything to do with this movie.
I mean, no, actually, I know the real reason is that I think Mike Hoare is from Northern Ireland, and I think he did something with his mercenary company. He might have called them Wild Geese or something like that. So, or, gosh, I don't know. I think
Wild Swans, Wild Hogs.
Wild Hogs with Tim Allen, yeah.
And isn't John Travolta in that movie too?
I think he is, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
The great John Travolta. What a great dancer.
Yes, I really liked Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, with his nose plugs and his dreadlocks and
man animals.
Look, there's his favorite food, rats. Rat brain. Berry pepper.
Good old Barry Pepper. What a film. Oh, let's fly these Hawker Harrier jets that have gas in them still after 1,000 years.
1,000 years, yeah, no problem. No problem.
Oh, goodness. Well, this is, and the drill instructor, we forgot, the one who helped them out. The Colonel Reed Henry shoots him for like no reason.
So much double crossing.
Just double cross after double cross.
Appears to shoot him with a paintball because it's clearly just paint on his forehead, which I'm sure would hurt a lot.
Wouldn't kill you, but that would hurt like hell to get shot with a paintball that close.
Yeah, with this tiny little dog in the park.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, what a film.
Yeah, truly, truly crazy. Edward Fox, though,
shining star.
Your reputation is unblemished.
Yeah, he's still around.
Yeah,
he's still around.
Yeah,
he is such a British aristocrat.
Yeah. Scott Glenn is still around as well.
He is, yeah.
How old he is not clear. If you go to his Wikipedia page, it does not have a birth date.
It doesn't, yeah. Who knows?
It gives a range, and that's the best you get.
He doesn't want you to know.
I guess not.
Well, good. Well, this is fun. This is only the first movie we'll be reviewing today. Mm-hmm. We'll be on to another one in just a minute.
Another great film. What it is, though, you'll just have to wait to find out. Yes. Okay. Well,
that movie, Deep Throat. Just kidding. Just kidding.
We're pivoting in a new direction.
But what's the historical context of this?
Now, why did she leak all this information? I thought this was going to be about Watergate. What's going on?
Ooh, well, this is Matt signing off.
And this is Max signing off.
Have a good day, guys.
If we pull this off, it makes Watergate look like kid stuff. Listen, that old man knows about secret deals that could blast half the civilized world apart.
How nice to meet you. You're both Lucases, are you?
Oh, I'm Michael's sister. This network is riddled with nepotism.
That's the nature of networks. Please, have a seat.
Or whether if he and Hitler planned it together.
You know, I'm well acquainted with all this.
I understand. It's just to refresh your memory.
So, ball in your court. What do you want to see me about?
To get Hess out of Spandau and deliver him to us.
Am I supposed to laugh?
Willie! Come in, come in. If you could have seen Barclay's face. Well, gentlemen, we all agree it's not Hess. Come, drink. To the end of Hess.
He was watching us. You're sick!
I know, but I'm sure you'd sympathize if you knew what hell it is living the life of a voyeur.